Yeah, you gotta,
Which was
you gotta laugh.
lacking
You
the
gotta
other
laugh.
night.
You just need a good
You gotta
photo
laugh.
of you.
You don't laugh, you cry.
Don't go too far.
Sean,
This is just on a personal note. I have a personal thank you to go out to the North Reading Police Department, and in particular to Officer Thomas Hatch. My wife and I had an emergency situation involving a family member last Tuesday. And Officer Hatch responded in a quick, timely fashion, very swift, very professional, followed up, and I can report that the situation resolved itself very quickly, and it was a happy ending to it. But I applaud him, and I commend him, and I thank him tremendously, as well as any other staff that I don't know may have worked on the situation at the North Reading Police Department. Thank you.
Jeffrey?
Thank you. I hope everything's okay.
It is.
Good. Excuse me, I seem to have a frog in my throat here. I've had it all night. On old business, I need to refer back to our last meeting, I believe it was September 27th that we had here, in which we were talking about the Water Commission and members on the board and having difficulty having a quorum and the reasons behind it. I think we all understand that we have many volunteers in the town putting their time in committees at their own expense, just to do something good for the community. And I know, we ran for office, and criticism comes our way, and sometimes it's deserved, sometimes maybe not, I don't know. But we ran for office, and we get what we receive. But when people come forward and volunteer their time, I don't think that it's in our best interest to be critical of people on committees, and specifically in the Water Committee, there was a lot of discussion about only having the meetings on one night and the reason why they were held on that one night. And I was researching that as time progressed in order to make sure that whatever was going on there with the Water Commission, we can rectify and we can correct. But in that last meeting, it was stated that the reason for it was because the chairman of the commission would not be flexible on Tuesday night meetings. And I looked into that, and that in our last meeting that became evident that that was not the case, because they've been looking to change the meeting nights so that everybody can make it. So when we make comments in public that put at question someone's efforts to do a good job, I think we need to be careful with that, because it's very concerning to me that when that happens, why would anybody want to volunteer and be criticized when they're trying just simply to do a good job? And then to say that someone else on the board is more knowledgeable than everybody else, and that person should be there, that's not fair to all the other members on the board. So, I get feedback, just like you all of you get feedback on these meetings, and that was upsetting to some people, that a volunteer or a commission or committee would be criticized in the way it was on September 28th, or the last meeting that we had here. So I think that everyone's trying to do a good job in this town. I respect and admire all the efforts, all the volunteerism that we have in this town, and that we should not publicly be critical of anybody.
I must say, I don't know I don't recall any public comments, as you have suggested, being made in this forum. I know privately, you and I had a short discussion wherein I suggested that you may want to look at a couple of different personalities. But publicly, there was no comment that I made, or that I know any other member of this board made, derogatory towards any member of the Water Commission. So I, quite honestly, don't know what you're speaking of concerning any public comment that was made. I thought there may be some personality conflicts, and I spoke to you about that privately.
Thank you.
That may be what you're referring to, and if so.
No, that's not what I'm referring to.
Okay. I don't have any recollection of any public comment being made.
Anything else, Jeff?
Just to respond to Sean, that in order for me to be correct and accurate in what I'm saying, I did review the tapes of that meeting and to make sure
Okay.
I didn't step out of line.
All right.
That's it.
Anything else? Okay. I just want to acknowledge that Mary Ann McKay, who's now a certified Massachusetts municipal collector. And the awards are scheduled for November 17th at Sterling National Country Club. Anyone that wants to attend. But, Mary Ann's worked hard. She's done a fantastic job since she's come on board. And she certainly applied herself to get her certification. And she should be congratulated by all of us.
Absolutely.
With that, town meeting's passed. Moving on to a number of different issues, many of which have been discussed tonight. Financial planning team meeting met this morning. And we did talk about a plan, how we might deal with the results of, the negative results of the election. We have to put a contingency plan together. Steve, you're absolutely right, associated with the fact that it could be a mid-year cut, and we'd have to deal with that also. That's even a little more daunting from the point of view, we have no idea where that's gonna come from. You know, it's a little easier in a 2012 budget to say, okay, state aid's gonna be down by this amount. Mid-year cut has some other implications. The school committee has additional federal grant that's come into them. They obviously have to apply to collect this money like they've had in the past, but it's money that's going into their budget directly, and it's $475,000, of which $125 is being applied to this year's budget. It's money that they had planned on getting as a grant last year when they put the budget together. So they are holding off on spending the additional money to carry into 2012 to help begin to fill that gap. If in fact there's a mid-year cut, I think that'll have to be revisited and decisions will have to be made as to whether or not that money gets applied to filling part of whatever might come before us, in addition to the kinds of things that we will have to do. And then again, what that means is we have a bigger gap to deal with in 2012. So these are things that we're starting to think about, and probably after election at our next meeting, that we'll either be in crisis mode, beginning to make recommendations on activating a plan, or beginning to move forward with the normal budget process for 2012, which, by the way, has a significant challenge because of the lack of one-time money, or losing the one-time money that we've been operating on this past year. So that's where we are with that. I think that over the next, between now and December, we have the tax certification coming up. Where we set the tax rate and do our annual consideration of, how, if we're gonna have a split tax rate or not, and so on and so forth. We have all of our appointments, which are mostly routine, that take up some time. And then we have, and we'll be waiting for some recommendations from the water commissioners and the water department on water rates, which is a big concern to me because, clearly we're running in a deficit, and the actions that we took this summer have put us into a similar situation in terms of a shortfall of revenue for this fiscal year. And we're gonna have to make some hard decisions on what to do to deal with that issue. As you're well aware, we balanced the deficit that occurred for last year, in the last fiscal year, out of a capital fund, which is a result of money that we received for the MTBE settlement, which was intended to be applied to water capital, not funding the operating budget, basically, or filling the deficit. So I would like you guys to think about, when we consider the water rates, that, and you might feed this back to the water commissioners, that I would like to consider setting the water rates in such a way that when we have a wet summer, or we have a situation where we turn the spigots off because we don't have enough water, that we can balance the water budget, plus have enough in the rate change to
Absorb that.
fill over maybe a 3-year period, replenish the money we've taken out of the MTBE fund. So if you get that message to as part of the discussions when they make the presentation to the board, I think we need to consider that. The other thing that I think we need to look at is the current water rate structure, the tiered structure, says that the people that use the lowest amount of water pay the least amount per gallon. And as you go up, high-end users pay more per gallon. It goes up in steps.
Right.
And I think that the lower, we have to look at the lower end rates this time around.
Yeah.
If we're gonna get to a point where, on a down year, we can fund the budget, fund the operating costs. And then obviously, as we look at other sources of water, we negotiate potentially a new contract with Andover. Those are other things that'll come
Right.
into play. But that's not gonna, we're not gonna have that information for
A while.
November, December discussion.
Just, Mr. Chairman, if we're going to try and replenish the MTBE fund or whatever it is, and we're going to try to factor that into the rate structure, and I would suggest to the water commission to take a look at it. If they're gonna do it on a, over a 3-year period, that it be a temporary increase for that specific purpose, and that it goes away.
We could do that.
Because we have a tendency to, increase rates and it stays there forever.
Mhm.
So if we have a specific need to replenish a fund as a result of borrowing from that in order to stabilize the rates, or actually pay our bills, never mind stabilize the rates, pay our bills, that it become a temporary rate increase for a specified period of time or until such time that that amount of revenue has been replenished, and then it goes away.
Right, but we should also make a point to the public that water is an enterprise, and the funds raised in water rates pay for the enterprise, they don't pay for other things, right? And in fact, there is, as part of the energy conservation, some effort being applied to the water department in the area of, I thought, it was on the list of changing the pumps, the motors, so that they could be run at different speeds for different needs, different demand, which would save some
Sure.
energy, so.